and then the training, and we're going to mix in a little bit of, I guess, master's courses or PhD courses for the guys that have been doing it a long time. Your song and dance, you can kind of add a little bit of the history or the advanced stuff we talk about. So in this one, we're going to talk 8901N, 8905N, and then Electromagnetic, our newest. I'm going to try to divide it up between, I'm going to run through the 8901N fairly quickly because I think the Electromagnetic is our newest one, and it's the one that is the biggest opportunity for us out there selling the new fan clutches. So to rewind all back to Borg-Warner from the beginning, Borg-Warner started with their K22 series. Their K22 series was front air. And how I've designed this is the problem and the solution, how we talk about all of our sales trainings when we do our training. So the K22 front air, that's where it started. It ran from the beginning to 1995. And the problem was it was front air engaged. So the solution is rear air. They launched 1995 the K22 rear air fan clutch. So that ran from 1995 to 2004.
Question.
Yes.
Why is front air a problem?
Front air is a problem because there's the, correct me if I'm wrong, there's the hoses, and then when that breaks, it breaks your hose lines and all of that, your air lines, excuse me.
Yeah, the air feed is in front of the fan, it's the hose hanging out, right? The rear air, if they tuck it behind through the bracket now, protect it.
So, but that is 1995. So those are old, obsolete. Eventually, that's going to throw me off. And then, so we have the K22. So they launched the K22 rear air, and the problem was that with that one was torque. Fan blades got bigger, so it couldn't sustain that engagement. We always talk about torque in the gold tops. This is a little bit different, but back then it lacked torque. So what they did is they launched the K26. And what they changed on that is the friction angle. Your spring and your friction material equals your torque rating. So they changed the angle of the friction material, and that got them a higher torque rating. If we look over here, this is a good illustration. There's the Drive Master HTS style, that's the flat friction material. I don't have any here, but that's flat friction material. And then there's the K22, that's at a higher angle, and then you get the gold top or the 8901N, or actually, the K22. So then we go into ours, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So what they did was they launched the K26. They changed the friction material, and then with the K26. The profile on some OE applications, it was too long, so it didn't fit. So then they came out with the K30, which is a shorter profile. When they launched the K30, the fan started getting bigger, and so then they needed a higher torque rating. They got a higher torque rating by changing the angle of the friction material once again. Nope, they didn't change the angle of the friction material. What?
Just
okay.
The friction material.
Oh, the friction material. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Just the friction material. Thank you, Dan. And then they launched. So this one, the K30 and the K32 are still around today. So those are still present today. And that leads us into the K32, which is where we get to the 8901N. So the biggest issue with the Borg-Warner fan clutches, this is a pop quiz for the ones that have been around for a while and not for a while, is air leaks. Oh, that was a pop quiz, guys. Someone was supposed to scream out the answer.
There was no question.
You just said it was a pop quiz. You didn't tell us.
There was no question, therefore there was no.
Okay, all right. It's my first one. The last one of the day. I will make sure.
Kate, would that be air leaks?
That would be air leaks. Good job. Thank you. So that's air leaks, and this is.
That was good.
So this is where we get into the 8901N and the 8905N. The biggest problem with Borg-Warner fan clutches are air leaks. Good job. So this is the air shaft. It's a two-piece system. You have the bracket, you have the clutch pack, and you have the air shaft that sits right there in the middle. And what happens is there's ever so slightly a harmonic vibration, okay? And what that does is that nibbles away at the O-ring right here. Many of you guys, this is what we talk about all the time in one-on-one training. So that nibbles away. I'm going to pass all this stuff around just because we like show and tell. So that nibbles away at the O-ring, and then once that O-ring nibbles away ever so much, it causes air leaks. And that's what the most common cause of failure in a Borg-Warner fan clutch is. Our solution to all of that is the extended shaft, and we added a urethane O-ring. So we used urethane O-ring. What the urethane O-ring does is that will stable the vibration, and then the Viton will seal out the air. So with this combination, excuse me?
Why Viton?
Because it's a higher heat rating.
Do you know the history of how we made the shaft longer?
With our teardown, the guy in teardown.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, we'll talk about. I love that he's in this class. He's really. So how we got, and Dan, you can probably talk a little.
I don't know this.
Oh, so you don't know this story? Okay. So in teardown, we look for a common cause. If you guys probably heard this on your tour. So we tear down fan clutches looking for the common causes of failure all day long. We had a guy in teardown that looked in the bracket and said, boy, this is deeper than the shaft. Why don't we just extend the shaft and add another O-ring on there? And that's exactly what we did. Is that a true story? It is now.
It is.
No, yeah, it is. That is, so that's how we came up with the two O-ring shaft.
Did you get promoted?
I don't know. I'm not sure. It's Dan, actually. So with harmonic vibration, if you have harmonic vibration and your O-ring, a lot of people will ask, well, why, how long does that O-ring, how many rotations does that O-ring take before it leaks air? So it's a math equation. If you're running at 1200 RPM and you have 72,000 rotations per hour, that's 130 million per year. Make sense? Follow me? If it takes 300 million rotations before this wears out, you have about 2.5 years before you're over, on average, before this air shaft O-ring wears out.
And the worse the bearings, the worse the wobble.
Yep. So then we get into bearings. If you have an air leak, 9 times out of 10, or all the time, you have your bearings are failing. What happens is when those bearings are failing, it exaggerates that harmonic vibration. So it'll fast forward this wear. And then you're going to wear out that, you place another one on and they don't change the bearings. It's going to happen sooner and faster, and it'll continue and continue happening. It was one of your I think it was one of your customers that we had this with. They went through, they had a failure 3 times. So they had a failure. You were involved. This was years ago. They had a failure, sent it in. We said, oh, yep, you got to change your bearings. Put another one on. Had a failure. We said, yep, you didn't change your bearings. Put another one on. And Brad said, if you don't change your bearings, it's going to happen. It's going to be shorter and shorter and shorter, and that's exactly what happens. So that's what's happening. If they have an air leak, they need to change your bearings. It's a tall tell sign that you have bad bearings.
Well, we don't warranty it unless they do, right?
Yes,
Theoretically.
theoretically. We don't,
Brad does, huh?
And-
Brad didn't, they ate it. Well, they ate the first one we paid.
We'll usually teach you, like, kind of our unwritten rule. I mean, the first time it's like, hey, we'll cover you, but you need to do this.
Yep, the second
But
time
when
they-
it comes back with the same guy and the same vehicle and the same issue,
Yeah.
then,
No thanks.
yeah.
I'll never forget that call when Trent called me, and I said, how can you tell me that? You're in frickin' Perm and the truck's in Madison.
You can tell
And he
that-
says, I guarantee it. And they called the fleet, called the flood repair shops, they took the truck off the road and said, we ain't got time. Stopped the next morning, we ain't got time. An hour later, they had time.
Yep.
The truck was back in the shop.
Sure
They were,
did.
Again, $5,000. So,
a lot of people ask why we don't include the bearings with the kits, why we wouldn't include it in our 8901N. The reason is there's 5 different bearing configurations and we don't know which one that they need in that pulley. Also, if we did, so say we did, we would have an added part number. So it would add part numbers to our catalog. Secondly is the OEM does not, they do not add bearings into their kits either. So if we did that, then we'd have to increase our pricing. We'd have to increase the pricing, add more part numbers. So those are the reasons why we don't. But you're right. There is, when you open the box, it says if failure to change the bearings will void your warranty, could potentially void your
potentially. It doesn't
void your
say,
warranty.
it should say it will.
Warranty. Yep.
Well, you know, our competitors don't put that in their box anymore. For a while, Borg Warner did.
Yep.
And now they aren't anymore. So we're the only ones doing it, so they do use it as a hammer against us.
Yep.
So,
And Borg Warner will deny them if they don't change their bearings. What I usually say when I'm talking about bearings and the emphasis on changing them to counter guys, to outside sales guys, especially to counter guys when they're selling these. There's 5 different bearing kits. One of them is on, I'm going to talk percentages. Dan doesn't like when I talk percentages, is 80%, 85% of the bearing. So it's the most common bearing out there. So what I say is sell them. Tack it onto their bill. Say, hey man, you need these when you change this this fan clutch. Worst case scenario is they're not going to put them in. But it's on the bill. So whether it's ours or Borg Warner's, right? So, or they're going to bring them back and say, hey, these bearings didn't fit. Give me the right bearing. Or they're going to put them in and go down the road and everything's fine. So that's the best way if they don't know what bearings are used inside that pulley. So that's a common cause of failure that's our solutions for the 8901N and the 8905N. For many of you, most of you, half of you in the room, we were dual pilot, the 2.56 and the 5-inch fan pilot dimensions on here. So we only had one part number. About 3 years ago, we separated those part numbers. So that gave us the 8901. One is the 2.56 inch fan pilot dimensions and the 8905 5-inch fan pilot dimensions. The reason why we separated them is because Borg Warner, we both had a patent on it. They had the patent first, and so we had to change it. But we had to change it, and we did so good on marketing it that when we changed it, everyone said, man, this is not, now I have to keep double inventory. Now, for every 8901N I have in stock, I'm gonna have to have an 8905N. We said, no. The 8905N was only on PACCAR from 2010 to 2012, okay? So it was a small percentage that went on there, and it wasn't standard. So the fleet had to, they had to spec it on there, and it was only for 2 years. So last year in 2020, we sold 7% of all of our 8901N and 8905, all of our Borg Warner, 7% was the 8905. This year, it's 5% right now. So we would anticipate those are going to go, the number will go down further and further and further. But we did great marketing. So that is a lot of times the misconception in the market is people think that now they have to keep double inventory. Okay, so that's just the overview of the Borg Warner. That's 8901Ns. But I wanted to spend a little bit more time on the electromagnetic, because the electromagnetic is probably it is the newest, and it's the one that has this has a great opportunity. I mean, this is our number one seller, but the electromagnetic is a new opportunity for us. Dan's going to come up here and do some of the training because it's new to me as well. But electromagnetic is on the applications are on our school buses and local bread trucks, flat trucks. So that's where your opportunity is. The biggest thing we're finding with the electromagnetic is when we launched it, there was the pricing. So there's the pricing. We went out to all of our distributors or certain distributors and said, hey, what do you guys sell this electromagnetic fan clutch for? And they said, oh man, that's so expensive. That's $2,300. Or buy it for $2,300, $1,800, $1,500. So we brought all that back and we said, okay, now let's figure out the material cost, and we could be really, really competitive in this market. So we came out with pricing $750, $900. Well, if a distributor is buying it for $1,800, we're half the price. What we didn't know and what we suspected is with bus applications specifically, they're going to bus dealers. They're not going to our traditional aftermarket. So
The customer's going to the bus dealer.
the customer's going to the bus dealers. And that's where we didn't have the pricing, right? So those bus dealers in the past, now we don't do business with. So we do know that there's opportunity out there, but we're also finding the price is different. So the price between the heavy duty dealer or aftermarket and a bus dealer are different. But that's still okay because our material cost, all of that, what we would ask before we get into the features and benefits of this is demand. Because it is new to us. I don't know how many part numbers out there, a lot of different part numbers. We have 13 now. We think it's the 13 that are the most popular based on what the industry tells us, but that's not the bus industry because we don't have those bus dealers set up yet. I'm working with Navistar they're going to give us a demand list. Some of you guys, some of the reps have since went into bus dealers and said, hey, look, give me your demand. What do you sell the most of? And then let's see if we can't start manufacturing that. And then we'll get into pricing. And then it's a whole new opportunity, but it's kind of a whole new industry as well, right? So that is the electromagnetic. We'll get into a little bit of the features and benefits of the solutions versus theirs. I gotta move this. Dan, I'm gonna have you come up and explain it a little bit. So what Dan and I are going to do, because Dan is an engineer, so I'm gonna break it down to my simple brain to try. Yeah, I'm gonna try to.
So if it gets set up with Carolina, we talked about
Yep.
Thomas,
Yes.
Bird,
Yes.
will that become OE?
So it won't become OE. This is for their aftermarket. Okay. So yep, which we would.
Pre-Chad gonna get paid.
Exactly. So like Prevo's OE. We don't
Prevo's us,
Yeah.
and he'll get
Yeah.
into that. But we have ABC Bus.
Yeah.
So Phil has set up ABC Bus. We've been working with them for probably about 2 years, a year and a half now.
At least a year and a half.
On how many part numbers do we have added? You started with 2.
I think
That's
we're at,
coach, right? That's not school
I
bus.
think we're at 6. Yeah, they'd be Van
Yeah.
Van
Yeah,
Hool
yeah.
coach. Yeah.
So that's an opportunity, right? And then what we do is they work with engineering, they work with data, because that one we didn't have. But I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump over this. We have the technology. So what he'll explain is kind of how we got the technology. But we have the technology. So the technology is I don't want to say simple, but the technology is the same for all of them. The pulleys are what is different. We just don't know the demand. That's where we need to figure out where the demand is. ABC Bus came to us and said, hey, look, we're going to buy 400 of these or whatever amount per year. This is our top one. Okay, we're going to engineer and test that one first. And now we're moving down the list. But so there's ABC, but there's also all of these bus dealers that those are aftermarket.
Yeah, Ryan's working with D&W.
D&W is another one. Yep.
Yeah, there's one. Yeah, they have one of these there.
Yep. So I'll let you start with the Prevo and how we got this technology.
Okay. Yeah. So EM clutches. I think we've been with Prevo for 12 or 14 years. It was before I had started here. We had sourced coil pots, the electric part. We had another company making those for us. Working with Prevo through the years, they're running 38, 40-inch fans. I mean, some of their fans will take 80, 90 horsepower. So they came to us as a solution because the Lenig, the German company, that they weren't handling, their failure rates were high. So we started developing for Prevo. We had to do a lot of work to get the magnetism strong enough. It's the same theory as friction. Slip, you only get so many rotations or slip of friction before it wears out. EM clutches are metal on metal.
So the friction is metal.
Yeah, it's a 8620. It's a softer metal, and you've got a hard friction plate. But with Prevo on board and working with them to develop their new aftermarket solutions, there's a lot of nuances that we did, and we learned through the years with how to design electromagnetics. From little, there's chamfers in this geometry that gives you like a 15% change in strength. It's crazy what these little things will do. So we spent 10 years with Prevo slowly increasing their clutch strength. We got to the point where we decided that we were going to take on the coil potting or the actual wiring ourselves. We had outsourced it for years.
Do this.
So once we moved this in-house, the costing was a lot more in our advantage, right? We have control of all this now. So
that's when we launched and started going into the applications that we launched, those 13 applications from Prevo to these.
So the base is, I'll pass these around. So basically all these clutches are basically make an electromagnetic or electromagnet to power these. So this is the raw coil of copper we wind in-house for each unit. It's put into a metal coil pot. That's the coil.
So this is a flat friction material. Friction material wears just like any of our other fan clutches we have. It's flat. It's flat, so your grab needs to be greater, and so that's a common cause of failure, right? Is slipping in the fan clutch. What we did is we changed the magnetic. What's the word? The magnetic force. Thank you.
Flux capacitor.
Yep, the magnetic force to make that stronger. So now you just have a stronger grab. In turn, it lasts longer.
So magnet engages the clutch as opposed
Yep.
to air.
Yep.
Yes.
So he'll show you on this is kind of.
Yeah. So yeah, and so the coil we wind, we do our wiring with our wire harness. This is a complete. So this has got the harness in the back of that coil. Once everything's wired and we do our verify our amps and our connections are good, then we pot. It's a 2-part epoxy. It's a class H electric epoxy. It's like 450 plus degrees that hardens to. We do preheat, pour, and then we do a bake here, like a 24-hour process for potting those. And that's what encapsulates and it makes that watertight, the coil. So we make those in-house, and then with that, we have, I think there's only 2 coil pots for those 13 part numbers, so we're was Brian's, kit masterized, is that his word he uses, where we try to have all these available. We build them on the day of order. We don't stock a lot of them, complete assemblies. But it's 2 of those, and it's the same. We're going to see a bunch of pulleys and a bunch of that. We have all the parts to make them when we get the order.
I asked Isaac out there, because Ryan's deal, if he gets it, it's 70 a month, on
Yeah.
top of what ABC's doing.
Yeah.
I said, can you meet that demand? He didn't seem too sure.
Yeah.
So yeah. So we work. Yep. And so with this specifically, really with anything, but specifically this, if you find those opportunities such as that, we work with Kurt. Kurt now is the guy that we would work with, and he works with Dan on lead times. But the lead time we need.
The lead time I take, and I handle a lot of the factory and the production stuff
Yeah.
with either work with the machine shop or through assembly. So yeah,
It can't be overnight, right? So there's a ramp up.
But I mean, like that pot, he does 60 a day. He can do 60 a day
Oh,
of
wow.
that pot. So
Yeah.
Okay.
the 70's not
Not an issue.
Yeah.
not too scary. Yeah, the equipment's got the capacity, right? It's right now. Eric does most of all the steps, right? So
Yeah.
he's going to pot for 4 days of the month, and that's what we're doing now. So we've got the equipment's not an issue
Gotcha.
from that standpoint. Do you want me to flip this on?
Yep. So this is it released, and then
So
once.
yeah, it bolts to a bracket. It'd be a mounting bracket. Would be on the engine, normally engine block. Bolt through here, and then that mounts this to the engine, and that's your fan. And then basically all you do is, just like you give 12 volts to the solenoid, turn the air on. It's giving that 12 volts right to this. You'll hear it click, and it just turned a magnet on, and it sucked this down, and now it's all a single.
Does that slip before it grabs?
Slightly. Yep.
Is it the same amount of slip as our air? Is it?
No, it wouldn't be the same amount of.
No, it's less.
yeah.
It's less of a rotation. I don't know the actual number, but it's less. Yeah, these will gall way faster. They don't. The friction doesn't wear like our brake style stuff. So, but that's all it is for on and off. There's a thin plate between the fan mounting and that friction piece that we have, and this is just a spring steel. So that's where you get your flex. It moves about 20 to 25 thousandths is all it is. There's just a slight gap, so it doesn't touch, and then as soon as you power it up, it makes a magnet, turns
Ours
on.
is to be better because it has more pull.
More pull, which means less slip per, the whole.
So
Same
it's
as the drive master type argument
Yeah.
with.
And full, yep, exactly. And with full disclosure, so it's going to last longer. When you go visit these shops, they're going to talk about this pigtail, because if a belt breaks loose, it breaks this, it breaks away, and then they have to buy a whole new fan clutch. So when we talk about common causes of failure is wear on that friction material. However, premature failure is when it takes this out.
If a belt takes it out.
And that we don't have a solution for, right? So it would be they have to buy a new fan clutch.
What's that stuff they make Wolverine's bones with? When they just
Right.
I don't know.
What was the cause of failure for Linux?
Linux for Prevo was either they were burning up, and then 2 of theirs had gearboxes, and they had huge gearbox issues because 2 of the Prevos aren't integrated. We have an EM clutch on this gearbox, and they were split head gearboxes, and they leaked terribly. That was one of the big issues. The other one was it was German, and they could come over once a year to do warranty with them, and couldn't get hold of anyone, and so the
Yeah.
service and the availability and
Customer service,
accessibility
yeah.
was huge for them.
Can you not make the back of that fan clutch a plug so that if that thing breaks away,
We're aware of this. We'll leave it at that for now, but yes,
Be awesome.
yes.
Um,
Yeah, and it is 2 volt. I mean, as long as there's a portion of the harness up, they can re-butt connector and get it to work again. There's no polarity, there's no nothing on this thing. You just need to have 12 volts going through that coil in either direction.
what you're going to run into is if you go to a school bus, they're all replacing them now, right? Because they're all doing their PMs on them. They're buying not through our traditional market. And that market is the market we have to tap into. That's where our biggest opportunity is with these. That and what's their demand? Those are the question marks. We'll have a little bit of a better idea because I'm working with the Navistar bus division to give me those demands. So they're going to rank them for me, and then once they do that, we will have an idea of where to go from there, and if there's a part number that we don't have that we can start
like she said,
manufacturing.
These have come about either by requests. We've had someone's asked for a larger volume, internet hits, customer service calls. I mean, that's how we're ranking right now. And then they're working on getting more details and more information. And like I say, part of the design, the goal was to I guess set ourselves up to be pretty versatile, because most of the times, the only difference on, this is an 8865, and this is 7212, and this, I don't know which number this is, but this is the only part that's different on those 3EM, to make the 3EM part numbers. So most of the time your request is basically we need to figure out what this is, and we can develop one for it. That's where the time, and we got to have a little bit of volume to justify that, but that's the way we set up. Like I said, we've got the different pulleys, we offer different pigtails so we can adapt to other connectors, but.
So how do you know it fails? What an air fan clutch is easy. You hear it, it leaks air, whatever. How do we know these fail? The viscous clutch, that's one of the complaints about viscous clutch is always for medium duty. They don't even know they're failed, and they're still running up and down the road until the truck overheats.
Yeah,
How do we know
that's
failed?
going to be the same.
Same theory.
Same theory. Yeah.
Well, wouldn't there be a indicator in the cab that if it's no?
And
The
it overheats.
wires, if the wires were broken, wouldn't there be a connectivity?
I don't know if the truck will yell at you or not for that. But usually the coil will work. It's just the gap. So we need 20 to probably 45 thousandths of gap. In that range, it can still reach this and pull it tight. But once you wear enough off of this, the gap's too wide and the magnet can't go get it anymore. This is the best way to describe it. So what'll happen, it just won't engage anymore, right? It'll overheat because the fan never turns on. The magnet will still work. It'll still try to get this, but it just can't reach it because there's enough gone where it won't suck it down anymore. That's usually how it.
So what's been the life expectancy of an average life of one of those? I mean, if they got a problem, I understand the fan breaking or whatever, rip the wires off, that's a different scenario.
Yeah.
But what's life expectancy out of those clutches?
I think the test ones in back we were taking to 100, 125,000 cycles. The baseline ones we're doing were in the 70s. So if we were 1.25, 1.5 times is what we were seeing back there in our environment. I think these limit out about a 20. There may be similar spectrums as far as your fan size. I think they limit out at like 26 or 28 is about as big as they're going to get with these. If they hold 20 or 22 horsepower, it's kind of the rating on them. So it's definitely the medium duty, the mid-size stuff is more for these. We've seen some instances where like the bus first fit was probably, looks like it was either a Spectrum or an EM. They could spec which one they wanted on the bus. A lot of the Cummins, it seems like we've seen that a few times. So.
Lindsay, are we good on time?
3 minutes.
Oh.
So to be clear, you were including the reps in this program?
This one?
Yeah, because I used to sell electromagnetics and then I got.
Not Prevo. Yep. So Prevo, you can't. Yeah, I know. You used to sell Prevo. Yeah.
I did.
Yep.
Then I was told I couldn't.
Right. You can't. But you can sell this.
Yeah.
But you can't sell Prevo still.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Like
Yes.
coach manufacturers, if you upgrade them, can you do that? And they're buying through Prevo still, but I know a lot of coach manufacturers, like Marathon Coach in Florida. You could go
You
in
mean
there.
you go knock out where they're buying it from, which is Prevo,
Yeah,
but you get the credit and not.
but you like upgrade, like they're currently not buying it. You tell them about it. You have the option to upgrade. I don't know, just.
Well, if they're
But they're still gonna buy through Prevo.
That's like for Prevo. That's their only.
yeah, I think if they're buying through Prevo, I think that there is no other option.
Okay.
It's taboo. That's what it is.
Yeah. So it's a new opportunity outside of Prevo, right? If that makes.
Just roll over and play that and move on.
I'll just ask.
Okay, good. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Dan,